This working relationship and friendship actually started in the pandemic, and we were both looking for our next entrepreneurial venture and were introduced.
Where this idea came up from building Wist.
We were caring for close family members who had diabetes, and they were isolating, and we realized we were both trying to help them with insulin doses, etc. And we started chatting about that while thinking about the next business.
As you guys grow Wist, how do you think about scaling your tech, making sure the AI, data, and systems stay reliable as more users come on board? So
we didn't want to rely on a third-party API because then we're beholden to their changes, the changes of model, the changes of costs. They could go pop. There's so much. We didn't want to rely on someone else. So we committed to AWS, and we run our own models within AWS in a serverless manner, so it can scale across regions.
hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TechFindsTech. Today we have two incredible guests from Wist. We are joined by Aman Grewal. He's a co-founder and CEO at Wist. With him is John Hall. He is also the co-founder at Wist. So thank you guys for coming today, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Perfect. So before we dive into the questions, if you could introduce yourself and just give a small background of both of you. So could you just introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Aman Grewal, and I'm sort of a serial entrepreneur. I have a background in economics and data. I was at McKinsey for a few years when I was a senior manager, and then after that, I've led businesses, including employee survey business and financial data business, and now on to health tech.
I'm John Hall, and I've had a fairly varied career. Started off in web development, then moved into applications, worked on movies. Prior to this, I had a factory making clothes. So it's been all over the place really. I've had a few agencies that do design and marketing as well.
Perfect. The first question has to be, how did you guys meet each other, and where this idea came up from building Wist, and how did Wist, come into existence?
Sure. Well, this working relationship and friendship actually started in the pandemic, and we were both looking for our next entrepreneurial venture and were introduced. But what happened was, at the same time, we were caring for close family members who had diabetes, and they were isolating, and we realized we were both trying to help them with insulin doses, etc. And we started chatting about that while thinking about the next business. And we realized we were asking them just to send us pictures of anything they ate. And we were interpreting that in terms of what that meant for their insulin doses. And as a sideline, we started to say, hey, can we make this simpler? Use their history to identify the food item, use the coloring, etc. We started playing around with it, and it morphed into our business, funnily enough. That's how it came about. And I guess we are an example of that phrase of necessity is the mother of invention. And so we then got to the point where AI and LLM started to come out, and we realized there were no apps that were doing what we were doing. There was no technology. We saw that this was going to fundamentally change. And that's where we started to think about this as a business.
Yeah. I think it was very fortunate timing, because obviously as the progressions and the technologies moved on, we've been right at the front of it. So we've been able to go with it and use the best, most advanced models at the time. And because we've been using it ourselves, we built it as users rather than building it for someone else. So, I could witness my parents attempt to use technology that's far too complicated and too much data. So it's really driven, it's been quite a fun journey, actually.
Amazing. Yeah. So you've built companies in areas from like FinTech to employee engagement to email marketing, right? So what made you want to shift into health and nutrition with Wist?
Well, there's two parts to that, really. The first is that I've always worked with data and how to use data. I've always led user interface, user experience design across those businesses you've mentioned. And so this was natural to me, the data behind nutrition and how to get users to interact with it in a very seamless way. So from a functionality point of view, it's something that I've done before. It's really about providing a delightful experience to the user where they get the messages rather than the data itself. And so when this started to come about, it was a common area. But the other thing that's underpinned what I've done, I actually founded one of the very first B corporations. The first was one of the first 82. And so the notion of doing good through business has been with me for years. I've always sought to have a positive impact. And so when this started to come together, it was a natural space. We could make a huge difference to the way people were dealing with nutrition, but the impact, given the scale of challenges with people's diets, I mean, in Western society, it's probably the biggest health issue we're dealing with, meant that we could have an enormous impact if we got it right. So that's just hugely exciting.
Incredible. Coming to you, John, I was looking at your work, and you worked on from NHS platforms to movie sets. So what's one project from your part that makes you think, I can't believe I could actually do that? So what's that one thing from your past?
From my part, it's absolutely got to be working on all of the Batman, Chris Nolan Batman films and the James Bond films. It's an industry that I can't work in now because I'm too old and I don't have it in me to do 80 days, 6 days a week, all over the planet. And obviously I've got kids, so I want to be around them. But yeah, that's a role I never thought I would have. It was never even on my radar. It was quite fun.
Amazing. So obviously, as you guys are, actually running a very successful startup as well, and I also come from a startup background, so I understand the startups are never smooth sailing, and obviously for an outsider it looks pretty easy, but it's not, right? So as co-founders, how do you basically split responsibilities, and how do you handle it when, especially when you guys don't agree on a specific topic, and how do you resolve that, and how do you come to one solution?
Well, personally, I don't think I've ever disagreed with anything that Am's actually said. I think his background and his style of thinking is quite different from mine, but I always guess it. So I won't always be able to rationalize my thoughts, but I've never found the case where Am and can't rationalize his. So yeah, I don't think it's, I think we've got the same motivation. We want to help people. So it's not like we're trying to monetize for this or something else. So our goal is to do what's best, and you can pivot. So we can test something. If it doesn't work, we try something else. And that's one of the big benefits of being a startup is you're not a juggernaut that takes ages to change direction. You can just, this isn't working, let's do something else.
Yeah, I think you have to have a good fit with the person you start working with in the first instance. If you don't have that good fit, it's going to come unstuck. And I think I've had 7 business partners, and with John, actually, it's probably the best working relationship that I've had. There's been some really strong ones. It's just we seem to work well together. And I think if I think about that, there's a couple of things that underpin it. One is we're both, if you'd say, we're almost dreams. We love the ideas of where something can go. And some people get frustrated by that, but we're always getting, is this possible? Could we do this? We naturally go towards real innovation. And we enjoy talking about it. So that works well. We then have a good working fit where Joy looks after the technology, thinks about how to implement things. I think about user interface. I think about the user experience, what the product needs to do. And that's worked well. But then I think we're experienced enough also to know how companies work. And I have the title of CEO. My approach to being a CEO is to listen. You have to listen. And I think we both acknowledged, we had the discussion, our founder said, we'd rather I made a decision than we got stuck. And so I don't think I've ever done that. I mean, it's always been, let's talk through things and come to something that works. But I know that if I had to, I think we would both rather be moving than stuck trying to make a decision. And so those kind of 3 aspects, I think, have got us to really work.
I think one of the things I decided at the outset was, if I can't convince Aman that what I'm thinking is right, then let's just leave this wrong. So, and that's made things quite painless, I think. And also, another trait that we both have is we don't need to see the product to understand what it is. We can both visualize the idea, which that's something that isn't very common with my previous business partners. So I can describe something, Aman gets where I'm going with it. And certainly when you've got a product that certainly when we started, has never existed, I don't think you can get fully behind something if you can't visualize it. and we can both visualize our concept quite well.
I was, 2 days ago, I was talking to some other guy, and he was saying that two co-founders have to be two good friends for it to be a successful startup. Is that true, or two strangers, two people that don't have like any relationship or something like that, when they come together, can that also turn out to be a successful startup, or is it just, it doesn't have to do anything with that?
I don't believe I've had a single business. I've had quite a few businesses, but I've not had a single business where you either don't become friends or it fails. So if you don't get on, it will fail. I mean, I've spent more time with my business partners than my wife, just because. So you have to be able to get on with people.
Interesting, this case where we didn't know each other before we started. We were introduced as two people who were looking to start something. But I think our judgment, I thought John was the same. Our judgment in those early stages of trying to figure out what we were going to do is as much about the working relationship as the product.
Yeah.
Does this work? Can we actually work that closely together? And it's right. You end up in a place where you just instinctively, it's a real partnership. You're instinctively working together. So they become, as John says, they become the same thing either way around that you start.
Perfect. So coming to Wist, so as you guys grow Wist, how do you think about scaling your tech, making sure the AI, data, and systems stay reliable as more users come on board? So what's the thought process behind that?
So very initial test, proof of concept, we just hooked up to an API, someone else's API, just to see whether the models could be juggled to be reliable and could be accurate. But then very quickly we thought actually this could scale, and it became very expensive to run our own models. We didn't want to rely on a third-party API, because then we're beholden to their changes, the changes of model, the changes of costs. They could go pop. There's so much. We didn't want to rely on someone else. So we committed to AWS, and we run our own models within AWS in a serverless manner, so it can scale across regions. It can scale very, very easy, and the whole back end has been built like that from day one.
And John also said, so we try to run scale tests where we ourselves are pinning all of our systems to say just how far can this go. So there's a philosophy that John has talked to. But then you make sure that it works when the rubber hits the road.
Amazing. So nowadays everyone hears about AI, right? But it only works if it fits smoothly into people's daily lives. What's been the biggest challenge in integrating AI into something as personal as nutrition?
Well, I think AI can pose a challenge just by its nature. It's such a logical, probability-driven system. For us, it's been important. Our products are built with a lot of humanity. So diet isn't a rational decision. What you choose to eat is not rational. Eating chocolate cake is never a logical decision. People's decisions are emotional, lower order, impulsive. And in some ways, getting that right is the same as getting the product right. People are impulsive. They do irrational things. And to design for that, I think you have to be creative and merge that with how you use AI. What AI has done now, in my views, is made it very easy just to create products. You can create these similar products, or copycat products. You can launch them very easily, but they have no heart. They lack the heart or humanity. And I think people struggle to connect with that. And so, yes, our engines, our systems are built on AI, but we started from this notion of humanity, helping people, and that's carried all the way through. Where we've layered in AI, we've really had to make sure that the interaction was engaging, just really engaging, and that you almost can't logic your way to that. We were talking the other day about some of the great innovators. Whether we talk about Dali and Einstein, and they used to, whether it's a myth or not, I don't know, but when they were working, they were eventually, only Dali would hold a spoon and Einstein would hold a pen. They drop when they're falling asleep, and it wakes them up. And that's where they had their creative thoughts. And that's because it's a non-linear process. It's when you're being most imaginative. And I think for me, what we add in is that non-linear creative bit that makes people engage, whereas the AI makes it function. That's kind of how I sort of find it.
You've got dedicated pipelines to adding personality and conversation. So as much as we're performing all the calculations and assessing the images and assessing the text, we then have a dedicated pipeline that doesn't handle data. It just handles conversation. So we can give it a personality. The concept from the start was for it to act like you've got a personal nutritionist on WhatsApp. So there's always a conversation. If it makes a mistake, you can just text it back. Or if you want to add something or remove something, you can just text it back and say, I'll take that away, rather than having to go into a menu, edit, and then delete things. The whole idea is you interact with it as a human and let it be a computer.
All right. How do you see in the next 5 years? I know it's a far short question, but in the next 5 years, where do you want to see Wist, and how do you want people to actually think about Wist whenever the word Wist comes into their mind? What exactly do you wanna build with Wist?
For me, I think it goes back to the notion of doing good. And what Wist is a response to is almost overstimulation. We have so many sources of dopamine in our lives, artificial sources, whether that is largely foodstuffs are a huge one of those, but also devices, electronics. And I think what we're trying to do is turn this on its head and use those same stimulants to help people make choices that are good for them. It's a kickback against let's just sell by stimulating, towards let's restore your natural approach to life through those same stimulants that are now at our disposal. I think that's the kind of, as we talked to before, it's about creating the humanity in the products that helps you. And I think getting that to succeed means that we will succeed at Wist, but our users will also succeed. And that's what we've seen in tests, is by using these same dopamine stimulants, people to act in their own interest. And it's profound and it's very quick and dramatic. And I'd love to see us being part of this sort of, let's use these really powerful technologies in people's benefit rather than just making money.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I got to experience firsthand the effects of dementia with my father. And when the pandemic started, I basically became solely responsible for all food. And he'd been injecting insulin for 20 years and was overweight. Within 8 months, he lost 3.5 stone and had gone through pre-diabetes and was not diabetic again. So that understanding to me how rapid this change can occur with type 2. So for me, in 5 years' time, the notion of we've seen numerous users recover and ideally prevent even getting to that stage, that would be my absolute goal.
I think that's right. That for us, on a personal basis, those user stories are the things that really motivate us. You hear people tell you about their experiences, people who have been obese losing weight without feeling like they were trying. I mean, that's the story we love to hear. But also there's incidental ones. We've had users who went to the doctor and hadn't been very well, were deficient in a particular vitamin, and the doctor was advising them and saying, hey, you need to eat more of this. And they've gone, well, no, I'm eating that. Here's my history. So the diagnosis was better. Those stories where people come back to us and just go, you really helped me. That's what we, I think, look forward to, is those stories cascade.
That's inspirational, guys. So now coming to the rapid fire questions. So the trick over here is that you don't have to think about it. You just have to give your answer as quickly as possible. So first question would be one word that can describe your co-founder. You both have to answer that.
I do it in one word, but it's always just, when he points up with something, it's just perfect. So whether it's a concept or a phrase, it just nails it every time.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. But John, he thinks differently. He operates differently. He operates outside the box. He pushes the boundaries. Maverick.
And who is more willing to take the bigger risks when it comes to business?
I think we're both on the par there, actually. I mean, slightly different, but
on business, I don't think we found out yet. I think we've both been on the same journey and we've taken a risk. I have a sense that as a risk taker, we both ride motorbikes.
Yeah.
He will ride sports bikes at pace around racetracks and push himself to the limit. I'm cruising. So I think I'd say he's the risk taker.
probably.
All right. The biggest lesson you guys have learned about leading a startup team?
pick your team very carefully. It's incredibly important that every member of a very small team is good at what they do, and also fits cohesively within the team. Because if even one bad actor or one person doesn't fit, can break it all down. So
I think my point actually relies on John's, but mine is that give them space. When you hire people, give them the room to deliver their best work. If you micromanage them, you'll get much less out of them. You've got to be brave and give them space. I think that's dependent on having good people in the first place. And we've been lucky with that. We've given some great guys and given them space, and they've done phenomenal work. But too many founders try to micromanage their dream in, when actually letting go is how it works.
All right. One mistake early stage founders should definitely avoid.
not focusing on users, assuming that you know what everybody wants, I would say would be quite dangerous.
That's what I was going to say.
Sorry.
Yeah. Got to stay. I mean, what says it? You've got to be you've got to interact with your users. You've got to be there. You've got to get feedback at the earliest stages on everything. They will do things you do not expect. And I told the story of John's mum. I mean, John's mum was it was where we discovered that she was in the pandemic. She was going to the local post office to post chocolate through the front door. We were buying their food, but she was getting sugar. We couldn't figure out where from. The local post office was posting her chocolate bars, and then she wouldn't log it, right? And we were sort of saying, well, this is for your good. You're supposed to log it. You start to realize there's a guilt in here, and how do you do it? So the crazy learnings come from being really close to your users. These were supposed to be fast. Sorry, we're probably talking too much.
No worries. The last question I have in this rapid fire is the best advice you've ever received as a founder. What's that? If you could share that, please.
Well, for me, my dad was a maverick, and he always closed with businesses. And his advice goes one step further than normal advice we get. People say, do what's in your heart. And as a founder, you go through so much, you have to be really passionate about what you do. And it has to be not a logical thing. It has to be almost a love of what you're doing. He also said, if it's in your heart, you must do it. That's about living your life consistently with what you believe in. And so either way around we take those, that's the advice that I found most powerful.
And I think that's the best advice that I've got secondhand.
All right, perfect. Before we wrap this podcast up, guys, if you have any advice that you want to give, especially to the younger people listening, when they hear about AI and all of this buzz of AI happening, what's the one advice you want to give to them?
For me, I would say one of the most useful things that I think differentiates us from most of the startups in that sort of startup culture is both of us have run businesses, traditional businesses. So we have an understanding of business, and we're not just having ideas and testing them. We have an idea, think through it really heavily, make sure it works on every level in our heads, and then build towards that, rather than, let's just do this quickly, see if it takes off. For me, I think that's the best way to do things, but obviously it's not the most typical way of doing things.
I think for me, it's AI, I think is the biggest technological transformation we're experiencing. There was the sort of .com that I lived through. I'm old enough to live through that, but this is extraordinary, the pace of change. And I have children and nieces who are now coming out of university. And my advice is get involved with it, use it, do things that push you, build a website, build an app. Don't think about a commercial element. Just get in there, get your hands dirty and use it. You'll learn so much and it'll give you skills, and you may then go and build a business, but even if you don't, you'll have those skills because they're going to be absolutely required. And I think a lot of people using AI to use as a search at a cursory level, but deep dive. You say, I really want to build this, and then keep going and see how far I can get. So to me, it's get involved, really.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aman and John, for joining us today, and especially for me, it has been a wonderful and insightful session. And thank you everyone as well for joining us today. We'll see you in the next episode. Till then, keep finding the tech that finds you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.